Stawi is a product by KCB, Cooperative, NCBA and DTB banks and is regulated by the Central Bank of Kenya. Stawi, the lending app that's enabling MSMEs grow their businesses.
How powerful is the healing power of Vaseline? We applied Vaseline jelly to one leaf, the other we left alone. After just a few days, the difference is visible. Nothing locks in moisture better to keep skin restored. That's the healing power of Vaseline.
Answers here. Yes. Wow, what a nice gift. I would definitely give this next time.
Cousins Baby Gift Pack, a carefully selected range of safe baby products with natural goodness, trusted for decades by millions of moms across Africa. Cousins Baby, the gift that keeps on giving.
Nivea Men Deep Antiperspirant with the power of black carbon formula. 48-hour protection from sweat and bacteria. For a deep, clean feeling that lasts. New Nivea Men Deep Antiperspirant. Nivea Men. It starts with you. Official sponsor of Real Madrid.
Karibu ma'am. Let me take care of your hands.
Kwa sababu ni muhimu kutunza mikono ya mama, Omo ina chembe asili ya kutunza mikono ya mama anapofua. Omo, nguvu ya kutoa madoa sugu. Kutunza mikono.
That's when she replied, "Give me one good reason to stay with you." Nikamtumia 100 reasons to be my boo. Akanisho unabonga sana kwa text lakini in real life we ni timid. Hapo nika get minutes ya kupaint picture vivid. Akasema ati I'm in demand. Unadhani DM yangu ni MD? Kumbe nilikuwa nishasotiwa na 100 MB.
Call, SMS and browse from only 10 shillings with Telkom. Now that's power. Telkom, moving with you.
The wait is over. Check out Jumia Black Fridays for unbeatable deals all month. Shop the biggest sale of the year with up to 80% off. Jumia Black Fridays, even crazier with DTB.
Do your gums hurt?
Yeah.
Does your toothpaste contain sage, eucalyptus, myrrh, chamomile?
All that in one toothpaste?
Yes, try Colgate Herbal. Colgate Herbal contains nature's best herbs and Colgate's fluoride technology to give you strong teeth and healthy gums.
Ah, Colgate Herbal.
Let's go. Colgate Herbal for strong teeth and healthy gums naturally.
This is NTV.
Welcome to this edition of the Nation Leadership Forum. This is a platform that creates an interface between state and non-state actors and you and I, the public, to discuss matters of national importance, and tonight, public finance. The public wage bill consists of basic salary, all remunerative allowances and the pension spent on public servants. According to the latest audited report, Kenya spent about 540 billion shillings servicing public sector wage bill in the financial year between July 2019 and June 2020. If you consider a total tax revenue of 1.6 trillion shillings, that means out of every 100 shillings raised, about 34 is spent in servicing the public wage bill. The Salaries and Remuneration Commission was set up 9 years ago as part of the country's efforts to tame the surge in the public sector wage bill. Kenya's wage bill is on a stable fiscal path. Gains that have been realized since the National Wage Conference held in November 2019 be furthered. How are counties faring, I should say, in far as managing their wage bill is concerned? To make sense of this and more, I am joined by the Cabinet Secretary for Treasury, that is Honorable Okuri Atani, the Chairperson to the Council of Governors and also the Kakamega County Government, that is Honorable Wycliffe Oparanya, and as well as the Chairperson of the Salaries and Remuneration Commission, Madam Lynn Mengich, and finally the Chief Executive Officer of the IEA, that is the Economic Affairs Institute, Kwame Owino. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome on set. Let me kick off with the question to CS Yatani. Over the years, we've seen gradual improvement as far as key ratios are concerned. If you're looking, for example, at public sector wage bill to GDP, from 2014-15 at 9.6%, we are now at about 8.3%. Still, we haven't hit the recommended threshold as far as this is concerned. What's your assessment of the state of the public sector wage bill, CS?
Good evening. Thank you very much for the opportunity to engage on this matter. Foremost, we need to realize that what actually constitutes salaries and allowances. It's clear that over time, we have seen a represented growth of salaries and allowances from basics to extremely high, percentage of the revenue. We've seen cases where now, at the moment, we are spending over close to 20%, actually 20% of the national budget on salaries. And we've seen unprecedented growth within the last 10, 12 years. And one of the reasons that has really caused heavy expenditure is the constitution of the 2010 that created a number of constitutional offices that devolved, devolution setting. And as such, they've been centers of growth. And a lot of people, there's been a tremendous increase in the number, but also agitation for more salaries. We've seen cases where the public demand quality services. The desire, given the level of awareness of our people, the quest for quality services at all time kept on increasing. And we have to cope with this pace. You see now we have the educational policy where there is now 100% transition. This number calls for increased number of teachers to cope with the number. Health services the same. And the same number of commissions that are actually getting more assertive in terms of undertaking is mandate. And all these are centers of expenditure. And ideally, we should have a maximum of 35%. Is recommended that only 35% of the recurrent expenditure be on salaries. But at the moment, where are we? We are at almost 48%. In my view, there's so much to be done. If you continue on the same trajectory, it's going to put a lot of pressure on our fiscal framework.
Let me hold you there, CS Yatani, if I may, please. Let me hold you there and cross over to the chairperson of the Salaries and Remuneration Commission, Madam Lynn Mengich. Clearly, the CS there highlighting a couple of things, including the fact that the public finance management framework is very clear that no more than 35% should be going to the salaries and remuneration of persons. What are some of the challenges you're facing as a commission as far as addressing this issue is concerned?
First, let me agree first with the CS that currently at 48.1% of ordinary revenue, that wage bill is not fiscally sustainable. Indeed, it crowds out finances for development and social services as highlighted by the CS. However, we've seen improvement over the years, but it has not reached where we would like to be, which is the 35%. So what are the current challenges? So the first challenge that we are facing is increased numbers. So over the years, we've seen an increase in the absolute number of employees in the public sector. Currently, we are standing at about 824,000, and that has risen from about 700,000 in around 2014. So there is just a sheer number of increase. The other real key issue that contributes to the increased wage bill is productivity. If we look at the issue about productivity, if we're able to increase our revenue, then as a percentage, the absolute amount of wage bill would not be the main problem. So one of the biggest challenges is the issue about labor productivity. Okay. And to put it simply, that is about optimizing the inputs for maximum outputs. Yes. If we're able to do that, we would grow the economy. Economic growth definitely leads to increased revenue, which then means that the revenue of that revenue to wage bill will automatically come down. Okay. So that is one of the big challenges that we have today. But let me mention one other final one, which is also a very big challenge. There are many, but the other one is we've got allowances, which today amount to 48% of the wage bill. Yes. And that's an area that requires a lot of management and control. So those are some of the key challenges today.
Let me cross over to Kwame Owino and really latching onto what Madam Lynn Mengich has just pointed out. If you disaggregate Kenya's public sector wage bill, you realize that over time, the proportion being taken by allowances and benefits is increasing compared to the burden pressed by salaries. Kwame, what's your assessment of this trend as we are seeing it?
Okay, you're right. And I think Lynn has just mentioned that as well. So for instance, it's amazing that we have 247 distinct allowances in the public sector. 247. I mean, that number in itself just tells you that something is wrong about the design of the wage structure, because it means that anybody can sit in their office and find one way or the other to claim an allowance in addition to their wage. And so what it's telling you, obviously, is that the design is also wrong. So it's just not about whether we can have more money coming into the public sector. If you have 248 allowances, now not everybody is qualified to claim them, but basically it's just a wide range that it means that even if the revenues were to grow, I think the claims for allowances would grow in turn and not shrink that ratio as the chair of the SRC has said. So I think there's just basically a structural problem. And then the other, of course, is the question of Kenya. I mean, the government's relations, industrial policy relations. I mean, industrial relations problem, because it is as if the government of Kenya only responds to harsh rhetoric of strikes, and what that happens is that the wage negotiations becomes a very, very, very highly political process. And what that means then is everybody takes a hard line, there's brinkmanship, and every time the wage arises, obviously the allowances have to. There is no other solution but to actually trim back those 247 allowances to make them something more reasonable. I mean, 25 years ago, there were 38.
Yes.
So that proliferation in itself is part of our problem. And everybody comes in, including some of the things you are seeing in the BBI. I know this is not a discussion about BBI, but which will add to those allowances as well. So I think we have to get serious. And this is a political problem. It's not a technical one, as Lina mentioned. She knows what the problem is. It's just basically whether the cabinet secretary and the cabinet and the president together with Parliament would insist and say, look, this thing has to stop. Otherwise, we shouldn't lie to Kenyans that we are trying to make to save money by paying reasonable wages and ensuring that there's sufficient money to pay for social services.
Great, Kwame. Let me cross over to the chairman of the Council of Governors. And Governor Paranya, if you can hear me, the Public Finance Management Framework sets a ceiling of 35% as a maximum, as the amount of revenue that should be designated for public sector wage bill expenditure. But if you look at the Controller of Budget reports, a number of counties are flagged as having flawed this particular requirement for years, not just 1 year. What exactly is the challenge facing county governments, Governor?
Hello, I've just heard part of your question because I have a network problem. I don't know if it is from your end or from my end.
All right, let me just repeat the question, Governor, if you can hear me. The PFM...
Can you repeat your question?
Absolutely, yes, sir. The Public Finance Management Framework sets a ceiling of 35% of revenue to be designated for salaries and wages. But if you look at across counties, this is clearly a challenge based on the reports from the Controller of Budget. Just if you could point to us, what is the key challenge facing counties?
Well, the question was to me.
Yeah. All right, I think we have a challenge with getting Governor Paranya as far as this is concerned. But let me just come back to CS Yatani regarding the issue of benefits and allowances. You are on a mission of fiscal consolidation, which has been your agenda ever since you took office. As far as rationalization of these allowances is concerned, CS, how far are we?
Yeah, let me... I think it's really important to know the journey that we've traveled since we started on the fiscal consolidation path. One of the clear area where we are really having challenges is that the counties. If you look at the counties in the last 6 years, the wage bill has grown by 116%, almost from 77.4 billion in 2013 to 167 billion at this time. That means it's actually like, an employment bureau. Well, the intention was to create jobs and opportunities through creating that necessary environment for business to thrive and for people to access services. But what's happening now, that we spend so much on salaries, and yet we are not generating enough in terms of even promoting business. This is one area. But the same is also happening in the national government. Over the last few years, we have seen tremendous growth. From a figure of about we are spending close to 800 billion on salaries. And that is like very significant, over 40%. So this has to stop. Unless we do something, it's going to be very difficult. But the mandate of now coming up with, ceilings in terms of allowances and reforming those sectors, I would say is really the mandate of the SRC. But we are going to work together. And in the National Treasury here, we are quite lean in terms of bringing on board new staff. We have now come up with policies that for any agency, whether state agencies, whether ministries, they have to seek clearance from either the National Treasury or the head of public service before they are allowed even to replace a staff that has actually exited because of retirement or any other matter. So because of this now we have been able to control the number, but still it's so much. It's also important, I think, as Lynn has indicated here earlier, that we usually have challenges around election time where unions become quite active and they twist government into giving concessions and come up with all sorts of allowances, which is really not sustainable. And any time lost in terms of productivity, Kenyan workforce is not as productive as countries elsewhere.
Yes.
Like the average worker in Singapore is like almost 5 times more productive than the Kenyan worker doing the same job. The studies have shown. So we spend so much, remunerating people for work that can actually be done by less number of hours or less number of people.
Let me respectfully hold you there.
We have to work closely with SRC. Yeah.
Let me respectfully hold you there. I'll be coming back to the issue of productivity assessment and the index which was proposed. But let me cross over to Governor Paranya. If you can hear me, Governor, the Controller of Budget has flagged that only 10 counties are adhering to the ceiling which is prescribed for salaries and remuneration at 35% of revenues. What's the key challenge facing county governments, Governor?
I can hear you, but I'm sorry, we had a technical problem. Your machine said a problem. But before I answer that particular question, let me state the situation as it is at the county level. You are aware that when counties were established in 2013, we took over employees of the former local authorities who had a salary already established. And also because functions that were to be performed by the county governments were also transferred. So those particular functions came with the employees, the respective employees. And thirdly, as county governments, we had also to employ our own employees through the County Public Service Board. So we had a mixture of 3 types of employees, those from the local authority, those from the national government, and those that we employed. You are aware that those who employed ourselves, our salary scales are controlled by SRC. But the other 2, we had no control because we had just to maintain the salaries that they were getting. And we found out that the local authority employees were getting very high salaries. So all this put together, it has taken time for counties actually to meet that requirement of the 35%. When the Public Finance Management Regulation came into being 2015, we had agreed with the then CS in charge of Treasury that we will have a transition period of 3 years. Unfortunately, because most of these employees were young, very few have retired, and that's why we still have that problem. So this is a problem actually we inherited from the local authorities and from national government for the functions that were transferred. Otherwise, in our own employees, we work within the guideline of SRC.
Okay. Right, and that point by Governor Paranya takes us to a short break. Remember, NLF will be back, and you can be part of this conversation online by tweeting at NTV Kenya at AmbokaJH. The hashtag is #NMG Leadership Forum.
The wait is over. Check out Jumia Black Fridays for unbeatable deals all month. Shop the biggest sale of the year with up to 80% off. Jumia Black Fridays, even crazier with DTB.
Honestly, babe, what is chai bila maziwa?
I know, darling. Like this lactose-free milk. Is it even real milk?
Why don't you ask the expert? Me! Gold Crown lactose-free milk is 100% natural cow's milk. The only difference is that the lactose in the milk has already been broken down, making it easier to digest. So no more funny feelings in the tummy.
Wow! And it tastes just like regular milk.
Because it is. And you've heard it from the cow's mouth.
What a relief. Thank you, Gold Crown.
If regular milk makes you feel uncomfortable, try Gold Crown lactose-free milk. Milk that loves you.
For a better tomorrow, don't forget to do the 1, 2, 3 with Colgate every night. With the Stay Soft refill, saving money is as easy as snip, pour, mix with water, and shake. Stay Soft refill. It's 2 liters of Stay Soft for up to 30% less. Coca-Cola. Taste the simple joys.
Every spoonful of Nutri comes loaded with the necessary vitamins, protein and minerals for you and your family to become healthier and stronger. Pick up a pack today from your nearest store. Nutri. Every spoonful counts.
Welcome back to the Nation Leadership Forum. Tonight we are delving deep into matters of the public sector wage bill. And just before the break, Governor Paranya took us through the challenges being faced at the county level. I want to come back to the Salaries and Remuneration Commission. And of course, I have the chairperson, Madam Lynn Mengich, on set. Before we talk about the productivity index, Madam Lynn Mengich, you have a couple of thoughts you'd like to share as far as allowances are concerned and the rationalization of this.
Yes, the allowances, indeed, as mentioned by the CS Yatani, is really the mandate of SRC. As mentioned, the allowances has 48% of the wage bill, or actually of the total wage bill. And the number as given by Kwame at 247 is obviously a very large number. They're not necessarily unique allowances, but nonetheless, that number has several problems. One is it causes disparities in pay. The second thing it does is it's control. It is very difficult to control allowances. One is able to be able to benefit from those allowances, and it should be. So what has the Commission done with these allowances is it was part of the conversation at the National Wage Bill Conference last year in 2019. And one of the resolutions is the need to have a framework, a policy framework on allowances in the public sector. So the Commission has completed that process with a policy that is now going through input from stakeholders. And it will try and address a lot of issues. Let me just mention 3 of the key ones. There are several issues that will be addressed, but one of the issues is about double compensation. There is a lot of pay allowances that is compensating for what is already compensated in basic salary. The other one is just opportunities to make money out of allowances. And I think most of us would identify with this one when we talk about payment for per diems, for example, and where we've reached a situation where most of the government work is done outside the office, and a lot of trips outside the country or in other parts of locally. But all that is motivated by opportunities to convert some of these allowances to personal benefit, because then there is an opportunity to make money. So that is another issue that will be looked at. But there are several areas that those policies will address, and it will be discussed with different stakeholders. So yes, we are actually in the process of having that policy in place and engaging the different stakeholders.
Okay. Let me cross over to Kwame. And Kwame, one of the issues you normally see in this country quite often is whereby we have a lot of strikes from various players, whether it's teachers, nurses, of course, agitating for higher pay. You don't strike me as the person who is a keen proponent of this, Kwame.
I don't, partly because Kenya's public sector, the discussion about labor in Kenya's public sector is sometimes completely misinformed. Government does a bad job communicating its case, so these workers in the public sector give the impression that they're poorly paid, even if they're not. So for instance, the way pay is calculated is on the basis of how much you earn for the number of hours that you work. So some of the workers in Kenya actually put in the lowest workers. I mean, we saw it from airline pilots. If you benchmark against the number of hours that Kenyan institutions, or rather Kenyan workers in the public sector earn per hour of work, then actually it becomes much, much higher than they do in other places. The public sector in Kenya also allows many people to actually work in the public sector and also run their own clinics or many other things, meaning obviously that they have a view. They straddle. So when you put all that together with the alliances, so if somebody simply tells you that, look, this is my wage, and that therefore I'm underpaid, when 50% of allowances per month actually top up that wage, then obviously that's a dishonest discourse. And I think that's one of the things that's not been perfectly made to Kenyan taxpayers to actually understand how many people are actually able to frame the debate in a way that makes them look like victims when they're not.
I see. Crossing over to CS Yatani, we're having this conversation within the COVID-19 environment. Clearly, this creates complexities we had not envisioned at the start of the year. We are seeing something like Kazim Tani, for example, which of course now adds on to the burden. How do you see us straddling this journey of the trade-off between ensuring that you create opportunities on the one hand and trying to trim your burden of the salaries and remuneration on the other, CS?
I think foremost, we also need to understand that as a country, we're already given the space the wage bill is occupying. It's really important that we have to really go back to the drawing board and see whether this is sustainable. But in doing this, we must also be alive to the state of the economy. The economy requires this circulation of liquidity. The wage bill, however difficult may be to manage, but at the end of the day, this also sustains the economy through creating direct opportunities and the disposable income for the various
I think we have a bit of a challenge there getting CS Yatani. But if I can get to Governor Oparanya. Governor, you did mention the challenges that county governments are facing as far as the public sector wage bill is concerned. What are you doing to rationalize this going forward?
It has been a problem for county government in that the functions that we were given, especially agriculture, health, and education, those three still demand to have more staff. For example, I will give you an example in Kakamega County. I have over 1,000 ECD centers. Before these ECD centers, the teachers were paid by the community, but now I have to employ them. Within these 1,000 ECD centers, the average stream is 3 per ECD center. In fact, the highest is 8. And if every stream you have to employ a teacher, I will need over 3,000. teachers. At the moment, I have 2,000. So you can't come and accuse me that I'm overemployed because I'm above the 35%. In agriculture, there were extension officers who were employed those days and then they were discontinued. So when we came in to boost the agricultural sector productivity, it forces us to employ more extension officers. So that area we have also a deficit. If you come to health, without the support of the national government, we will still have a big deficit. I feel that most counties are understaffed. However, I think the area that we have not worked on as county governments, which we can blame all of us, is that we have not been able to optimize on own revenue, because that is the only area I think we can now have more revenue, and I think most of the counties are working towards that, so that we are able to raise more revenues locally to employ employees that we feel are required for proper service delivery in the counties. So what we are doing, one, is rationalization of the staff to make sure that the few staff we have are used maximally. Secondly, we are coming up with new structures. And this is something actually we agreed during the National Wage Conference that we had last year, that counties should undertake relook at their structures so that these structures are optimized so that we are able to use staff where they are required. So we are looking at their revenue, increasing their revenue, and then rationalizing staff. And most of the counties have taken headcount so that any leakages that were in the system are sealed.
Okay, let me hold you on that thought because I'll be coming back on the subject of on-source revenue. But crossing over to Lynn Mengich with me here. From the conference we had last year, there was conversation of a national productivity index, which was to be piloted, if I remember, in the Ministry of Health and the Teachers Service Commission. How is the progress on this front?
So the resolution from that conference was, first of all, to develop a performance management policy that is centered on productivity. You'll realize that today, Kenya was among the first in the Commonwealth to launch the performance contract, which is a very good framework. However, it did not really succeed as much as it has done in other countries. India, for example, borrowed the performance contract from Kenya. They implemented it very well and have been able to improve their productivity. So that is one area that the Wage Bill Conference was looking at. Where are we on that one? The Ministry of Public Service is championing and are already set up a team that is actually working on looking at the current performance management framework with the objective of streamlining it and standardizing across both the national and the county governments and ensuring that it is centered on productivity. Now, what then the next stage for us to do is then to reward that productivity. And to do that, we need productivity indices. Now, to develop productivity indices, what was agreed in the conference is we will pilot it with the Teachers Service Commission, the health sector, and commercial state corporations. So we are in the process as a commission to develop a framework to reward performance and productivity. In the initial stages, it will not be productivity at the national level, but it will be productivity at the institutional level and productivity at the individual performance level. But there will, of course, be a third pillar, which is about productivity of labor in Kenya. And that is the mandate of the Productivity and Competitiveness Center, which is the Ministry of Labor. So that process is also starting. So basically, after the conference, we have started the 3 pillars to ensure that we have the performance management framework, the lead actor being the Ministry of Public Service. The Commission is leading the pillar on developing a framework to reward performance and productivity, and the Ministry of Labor looking at the Productivity Center. So we have started the process. But it will take us time to actually be in a position where we say we have developed productivity indices for Kenya as a nation. But it is it is a bit easier to do for the institution, and that's where we are beginning, and then we will roll out to productivity indices for the country.
All right. Speaking about performance management, crossing over to Kwame, this is normally a very sticky issue in Kenya's public sector. If you remember when there was conversation about introducing performance contracting within the teaching fraternity, there were a lot of issues which were raised. Why do you think this is the case, Kwame?
Well, I just think that Kenya's public sector unions are too strong, which is not a bad thing. But I think government sometimes bends, bends when it's put under pressure. So there's no reason for somebody to work at the public sector on their own terms. I think as the SRC, I mean the chair of the SRC has stated, if these indices come along, I think we have to adhere to them and impose them and use them for the purposes of determining what they are. So the idea that there can be a ghost law or somebody will simply decide that our productivity should not be measured, but still pay us as you think we did, is completely out. I think the other thing is also to use those measurements as intended to determine what the wages should be, because the moment you do that, then obviously, so that a wage cannot be simply a claim by a sector saying that, look, we are a large sector, we don't want to be managed by person X, we want to be managed at the national level by a commission, so that in the commission our colleagues and they'll sit and determine what our wages should be. I mean, that's definitely not a good way for managing efficiently. But part of it is just basically that government in the center, I'm talking about national government, has not found an effective way to manage its industrial relations, especially the negotiations part, and tends to fall back, or rather tends to actually blink whenever it is blackmailed. Because these people can draw a hard line, and brinkmanship has become the way they do it. They withdraw services, Kenyans suffer, people die in hospitals, and then the days for which they did not work, they're still paid for it. So that's a very bad mechanism for actually negotiating. So negotiating that capacity in government, or rather creating that capacity in government to negotiate in good faith and not allow itself to be actually blackmailed, as has happened, is one of the things that needs to happen.
But just briefly, Kwame, still with you, to be fair, one of the unions which raised this issue around performance contracting was arguing around the issue of disparities. So let's say I'm a teacher or a doctor in Moyale vis-a-vis another one in an urban center. The resources at my disposal are very different, and therefore sometimes our output may actually just be a reflection of some of these disparities. Don't you think they tabled a viable case?
No, that's viable, but I think we cannot then say that what then is required is for government to say, fine, measured against your peers in your area, what happens? So I don't see any reason why the teachers paid by the public sector in Nairobi, for instance, should have the schools that lead in the country and another one have schools that do not lead. And we cannot have that conversation around wages by simply saying that, look, those conversations need to be had, and I'm sure there are peculiarities in different places. They must be taken into account. But what I'm trying to say is that I think the public sector has to be careful that you're not paying people on their own terms because they have a membership in a union of 200,000 people. Yes. And government will always blink when faced by them.
Let me cross over to Governor Oparanya, if you're still with me. One of the issues you raised was on-source revenue. A lot of governors I speak to will tell you that they don't feel the avenues accorded to raise on-source revenue equal the devolved functions. Do you share this view?
Yes, I share that view because raising on revenue at county level is really a challenge. In that at the county level, there are no structured taxes. At the national level, you know the taxes are structured, so you are able to predict and project what you will be able to collect in future. But at the county level, you know, it's a service that we collect from Mamamboka, and sometimes because of poverty levels, actually, it is difficult sometimes to collect these particular taxes. While counties are endeavoring to make sure that they collect as much as they can, it has been very difficult because our own taxes are not structured. And in fact now, this year, this year, and maybe next year, so long as COVID is still with us, I can tell you counties are going to face a major challenge in collecting on revenue because most markets are closed, and even if they are open, it would be very shameful to go now that you are collecting levies from those Mamamboka. So it is going to be a big challenge. And we felt that in now the PBI that is coming, we have avenues where some of the taxes that are being collected at the national level can be devolved, especially when they affect devolved functions. Then they should be devolved so that we can raise the levels of our own revenue. But finally, we are optimistic that with now the promised increased revenue from 15 to 35%, we are now able to operate within those guidelines of 35%. Because our revenue side is a real problem.
Great, and that point by Governor Oparanya again takes us to a short break. We'll be coming back for the tail end of this conversation. Don't touch the dial.
Wanasherehekea miaka 20 na wewe. Piga star 444 star 20 hasi. Tumia shilingi 20 pekee utunukiwe 20 minutes na 20 MB.
Go ahead is believing to make each day a brighter day.
Unapotembea kubali ndoto zako.
It's those small acts that go a long way.
Usiwe na hofu
Go ahead is our determination to rise.
moyoni.
Going ahead is our courage to do something new. Go ahead is never giving up in the face of adversity. It means growing our own. It is making the most of what we have. To go ahead. Now, that is the Kenyan spirit.
Kuenda mbele ni roho ya Kenya.
All day, we expect our mouth to do all kinds of things. That is why it needs all-round protection. New Oral-B Pro Health toothpaste. Its advanced technology helps prevent both tooth holes and gum problems that can lead to tooth loss. It strengthens your teeth, giving them all-round protection. Because your mouth is doing more than you think. New Oral-B Pro Health. All-round protection for your whole mouth.
Wataipenda, ataipenda, and them, pia yeye, na hao pia. Kila mtu ataipenda. Pata kila kitu upendacho kwa M-Pesa kupitia star 334 hash. Kwa kuweka kila kitu kwa namba moja, tumerahisisha mambo ili uweze kuendelea kufanya vitu unavyopenda ukitumia M-Pesa.
Get fresh, gotta get fresh.
Down is a boom boom pow, down is boom boom pow. Smells baya na uchafuzi na zidi na improve down is. Protect nguo zangu na nukia niko safi. Lazima niwe fresh na down is boom boom pow. Boom boom pow, down is new boom boom pow. Smells zote na zi boom boom pow. Powerful freshness, down is boom boom pow.
Nani 15 bob too?
I wish I could have soft and glowing skin.
New Geisha Black Soap with activated charcoal to give you soft.
Na zote ni the same size.
While other networks discriminate, sisi hatubagui, tuna serve everybody. Get to Bonga 10 and enjoy 100 minutes Airtel to Airtel. Dial star 544 hash. Not just for a few, but for every one of you. Airtel, the honest network.
Go ahead is believing to make each day a brighter day.
Unapotembea kubali ndoto zako.
It is showing everyone that we can all be heroes.
Usiwe na hofu, usiwe na shaka.
Going ahead is our courage to do something new. It's those small acts that go a long way. It means growing our own. It is making the most of what we have. It is supporting each other where we can. To go ahead. Now, that is the Kenyan spirit.
Melissa?
Mom, it's Dad's birthday today. I'm giving him a party just like he gives me.
Nothing makes a mother more proud than seeing her child growing up. But I know that as she learns to care for others, she'll face even more germs and the risk of illnesses.
That's why you need strong Dettol protection. Just 1 cup of Dettol protects your home and family from up to 100 illness-causing germs.
Growing up needs Dettol protection.
In Kenya, 1 in 2 children suffer from cavities. Brushing with Pepsodent removes bacteria and repairs tiny holes before they become cavities. Because every smile matters.
When the world changed, it made us go back to the simple joys and love the little things even more. Like serving up your best, eating together, and sharing more. Now, we'll take nothing for granted and always remember to taste the simple joys. Coca-Cola. Taste the simple joys.
How much?
Hii ni so.
Hii ni 20 bob na hii ni so na zote ni the same size.
While other networks discriminate, sisi hatubagui, tuna serve everybody. Get to Bonga 10 and enjoy 100 minutes Airtel to Airtel. Dial star 544 hash. Not just for a few, but for every one of you. Airtel, the honest network.
This is NTV.
New Blue Band mayonnaise. Made from natural ingredients with omega-3 and 6 to enjoy long-lasting freshness and natural taste unlike any other mayo. Grow healthy and happy kids with New Blue Band mayonnaise.
Miaka 20 safari ilianza ya kutuunganisha kama Wakenya. Twende tukiuke, twende tukiuke. Let's go beyond, let's go beyond. Let's go beyond. Mimi na wewe tukikundi, kazi nzuri ya kujivunia. Let's go beyond, let's go beyond. Kwa juhudi na matumaini, twaelekea kesho pamoja. Twende tukiuke, twende tukiuke. Safaricom.
We all are looking for products to protect ourselves from viruses, but not all products protect us. Did you know that using Dettol soap and water protects against viruses? Many viruses are surrounded by an envelope with receptors that enable them to enter a human cell and cause infection. Dettol soap destroys the outer layer of the virus and effectively removes it. Protect your family from the spread of viruses with Dettol. Dettol cleans and is now tested and proven to be effective against COVID-19 virus. This has been Medivax for Dettol.
When the world changed, it made us go back to the simple joys and love the little things even more. Like serving up your best, eating together, and sharing more. Now, we'll take nothing for granted and always remember to taste the simple joys. Coca-Cola. Taste the simple joys.
New look, same great taste.
The wait is over. Check out Jumia Black Fridays for unbeatable deals all month. Shop the biggest sale of the year with up to 80% off. Jumia Black Fridays, even crazier with DTB.
That's when she replied, "Give me one good reason to stay with you." Nikamtumia 100 reasons to be my boo. Akanisho unabonga sana kwa text lakini in real life when I'm timid. Hapo nika get minutes ya kupaint picture vivid. Akasema ati I'm in demand. Unadhani DM yangu ni MD? Kumbe nilikuwa nishasotiwa na 100 MB.
Call, SMS and browse from only 10 shillings with Telkom. Now that's power. Telkom, moving with you.
Every spoonful of Nutri comes loaded with the necessary vitamins, protein and minerals for you and your family to become healthier and stronger. Pick up a pack today from your nearest store.
Nutri, every spoonful counts.
Welcome back to this edition of the Nation Leadership Forum, where we are focusing on the public sector wage bill. Crossing over to C.S. Yatani, who I must apologize to because we didn't get him for a while. C.S. Yatani, the pension bill is quite a luggage, if I could call it, in this country. And of course, we have had of efforts by the government to the National Treasury to streamline this. What is being done in this area, C.S.?
I think we need to realize that ever since the history of the public service, pension, as a government, we've been running a defined pension where the government takes the responsibility on the attainment of the retirement age. The individual employee is given some lump sum amount, and then every month is given some token payment in form of a pension. But now, since 2012, we've come up with a new law where the individual will also be contributing. It's going to be contributory pension and we are going to implement this. It's been actually a time that we've been toying whether to implement or not. There's been a lot of resistance also from unions, but now we are set and we put all the necessary structure in place. From 1st of January 2021, we'll be rolling out the contributory scheme, where both the employee and the government will be contributing to one basket. And the advantage of this is that, it's transferable. You can even carry your earning or whatever savings that you've made and transfer to another scheme and contribute, even actually benefit from it before the actual date of your retirement. So we are ready to go and we are prepared because we think we should take pride in our own savings as an individual in as much as the government is also contributing the same.
And crossing over to Madam Mengich here with me in studio, the superannuation scheme, of course, which kicks on in January, I think. How much of a game changer do you think this could be?
Well, if you look at the pension today, it's about 65 billion and projected to grow to 87 billion, and it will continue growing. So from that perspective, if you look at that percentage, going to a contributory pension scheme definitely is going to contribute to reducing the burden that the government is taking on pension. So yes, it's one of the very key important factors to the wage bill, but the other key drivers of the wage bill must be addressed, because at that percentage of 65 as a percentage of 795, you can see it is substantial, but you will need to do much, much more to say it's a game changer.
All right. Crossing over to Kwame regarding this subject, one of the questions online is, Kwame, do you think we have a pensions crisis in this country?
I mean, in the public sector, yes?
Yes,
obviously.
the public sector, yes.
Because the public sector pension is what I think economists call a pay-as-you-go, where there's no set-aside fund for the payment of that pension. And so what happens is that pension, when somebody retires after their service in the public sector, they rely on revenues being raised by government, and then that's used to pay their pension. And that's a dangerous one because it's not sustainable. We are lucky we have a young population, and obviously many more people haven't gotten to that end. But what that means is that when you suddenly have a demographic change where you have many more people retiring, then obviously it becomes a problem. As you can tell, over the last, I think, 10 years, there's been a change of retirement age, not because we like people to work longer, but just because government didn't have the money to actually be able to pay their lump sum all at a go. So obviously that already means it was creating some clogging public finances in a way that was forcing government to make decisions that, with that in mind, basically bearing that constraint in mind. So if we have one that starts with the contributions, everybody contributes, then it's clear that that money can be placed aside, and that's a good thing even for national savings.
All right. Crossing over to Governor Paranya, if you can hear me, the same subject. You are for a long time in the planning and policy space in this country. What are your thoughts as far as pension management in the country is concerned?
Unfortunately, I can tell you that county governments don't have a pension scheme at the moment. And we have been pushing, like any other national government officials, employees, actually, to be paid pension. Governors do not have a pension, deputy speakers, members of county assembly. We do not have any pension scheme. But I think the new pension that is coming up, the one that you expect employees to contribute and at the same time government to contribute, that's the way to go. It will be very difficult for the national government to sustain this 100% pension from the national government. It will not be sustainable. Even as we push for pension scheme, we are in agreement that it should be contributory. A contributory scheme will be sustainable.
Let me come back to Madam Lynn Mengichi in studio. A lot of questions online asking whether you feel your hands are tied as the SRC.
Our hands are not tied. I want to explain that this discussion is about how much more can we push to get to the ratio required. Indeed, there has been improvement in the ratio of wage bill to revenue. It has come down from about 53% a few years back and to 48%. That actually demonstrates that the hands of the Commission is not tied and that a lot has been done. The conversation we are having is how do you then move from the 48 to 35%? And the recognition that the Commission has seen is that it cannot be done by SRC alone because the drivers of the wage bill are several. And the Commission has control over just one or two of those drivers. But the other drivers of the wage bill, we talked earlier about employment numbers. That is not within the remit of SRC. The actual spending on the ground, we may set the rates, but the actual spending is not with SRC. So our hands are not tied. A lot has been done, but it's about how can we bring together all the other actors who contribute to the wage bill so that together we can then make the next move from where we are to the 35% that is required.
Crossing over to CS Yatani, if you can hear me, online there's a lot of concern that you're talking about rationalizing the public sector wage bill amid pervasive job losses in light of COVID-19. What would you say to these Kenyans, CS Yatani?
If I just go back at the time we were starting the financial year, COVID was not with us. We were working on a stringent budget rationalization program, but we were not touching salaries. We were keen about reducing expenditure, particularly where we had some discretions, including travels, foreign travels, domestic travels. We were able to contain expenditure on that front. but we did not either get the courage, or we are not seeing it feasible to reduce on salaries. Because at the end of the day, particularly this challenge of COVID, we need people to work, we need people to contribute, we need to keep the economy afloat. Because we need to cushion the economy. Loss of jobs can be detrimental, not only at the individual income level, but also at the economy. Because you have to create, people have to have disposable income for them to buy food and other necessities, which is actually keeping the economy alive. This is key. We've also now realized that the creation, one of the stimulus package of the government has undertaken, was to substitute mechanized labor, mechanized implementation of projects through labor-based. That's why you see Kazi Mtani, people working on projects and programs where they contribute to the welfare of the society, of the communities, in their own communities. If you look at now the cases of the informal settlement, we see people opening up drainages, people working in social hall, painting, and doing all sorts of activity, cleaning, because at the end of the day, the health and status of the communities in those places are improved. But more importantly, the individual worker gets money at the end of every day and is able to buy, to sustain the informal economy by buying, a quarter meat, by buying unga, by buying sugar, and through these, the economy will keep on surviving, at least for the time being. Okay. That's why we are very keen about, labor-based contracts. Kazi Mtani, people working on rural roads, instead of using machines, using, labor, so that, the multiplicity of all these can support the economy.
Let me hold you there, see as clearly an attempt to go into the labor-intensive engagements here. Crossing over to Kwame, there's some feedback here for you. I disagree with Kwame on the argument about unions. Why can't he talk about the disparity of pay between the public and the private sector in some sectors?
Okay, well, I think comparing public sector and private sector is not necessarily sound thinking, because there are some jobs in the public sector that are not available, that cannot be performed in the private sector, and the reverse. So obviously, but let's compare the ones. So if you look at the government of Kenya is the biggest employer of doctors, and government of Kenya is the biggest, health workers, and government of Kenya is also the biggest employer of teachers and nurses. In all those sectors, average income from the public sector is higher than average income from the private sector, especially if you control for qualifications and age. So obviously, whoever thinks that Kenya's public sector pays poorly is probably not making the right comparison. Now, do people deserve to earn more? Certainly, but compared to the size of Kenya's economy, because we are paid according to our economy, so comparing Kenya to how German doctors earn and how South African doctors earn might not be also the right way to make those comparisons. So the point here is it's not aggression against unions. It's to say that because of union power, which is entirely a right under the Constitution, many people who work for unions in the public sector in Kenya have gotten a premium wage that they wouldn't get if they went to the private sector, for instance. And that's just a point of fact. It's not to express hatred or a desire for people not to have their jobs. All right. Coming to Governor Oparanya, there's some feedback here. If you can hear me, Governor. The issue is not about allocating more to counties, because counties still have revenue absorption challenges. How do you respond to this, Governor?
We have no absorption challenges, I can tell you. We have been in existence for the last 8 years. And in the last 8 years, I think we have now structures in place that are able to absorb funds as quick as possible. We had problems, especially the first 2-3 years of devolution. We had challenges. But at the moment, the problem that we have had, and CS Watan is there, the problem that we have had is the flow of funds from the Treasury to the county government. As you know now, as we talk now, we are in arrears 3 months. So how do you blame the counties for absorption when the money is not there? Secondly, we have now another obstacle with the Office of the Controller of Budget. She takes time to clear our requests, And this, of course, affects absorption. So to me, those two factors affects the absorption at the county level. Otherwise, at the moment, counties have proper structures that will absorb as much money that is available to the counties.
All right, and coming back to Lynn Mengichi in studio with me, there's a question here about, you're talking about a national wage, you're talking about a national welfare and benefits policy. Are counties involved as far as this is concerned?
Yes, the counties are involved. Let me just say the genesis of a lot of the what we are doing today was the resolutions from the Wage Bill Conference. That Wage Bill Conference involved both the national government, the county government, and indeed we had all the stakeholders from both private and public sector. These resolutions were then adopted by the 8th Summit in February 2020. So it then ceased to be an SRC resolution, but it's actually a national agenda. And let me also clarify that there is a steering committee that was set up at the summit. That steering committee is chaired by the CS, Ministry of Public Service, and co-chaired by the chairperson of Council of Governors, Mr. Oparanya. So that just goes to demonstrate that we are doing around the Wage Bill Conference involves both the national and the county governments, and even in the policies that I've just mentioned that are being developed, it does involve both levels of government.
And what timeline are we looking at as far as this is concerned?
Specifically, let me talk about the allowances policy, which is a specific one to develop a framework to streamline allowances and benefits in the public sector. It is at the preliminary stage of stakeholder input. There will then be the second level of a wider stakeholder input. So that is the stage where we are at the moment. We are projecting that by the end of this year, we will have gotten the stakeholder input, and therefore beginning next year, we will then see how to start rolling out. So quarter one of next year, we should start rolling out that policy, having gone through all the various stages that is required to ensure that everybody is brought on board.
CS Yatani, a question here for you. If the CS is serious about rationalizing the wage bill, why doesn't it start with the recommendations Treasury puts to the National Assembly as far as the benefits of parliamentarians are concerned? CS Yatani.
Yeah, thank you very much. This has always been a very difficult area. I think the right person to actually answer that is Lee Mengich, because how SRC has suffered, when they made attempt, the budget was reduced by National Assembly almost to a bare minimum, and they were not even able to function. It's a very difficult process because National Assembly, General Parliament, have a key role in budget making, and whatever attempt we make, sometimes we hardly succeed. It's been a lot of compromises that are made between the Treasury or various institutions and Parliament. We always make attempts, and that's not the only. It's not only about salaries. About certain expenditures we think can be contained, other recurrent expenditures for Parliament, but whether we succeed, most of the time we don't, unfortunately.
Lynn Mengichi, you want to say something about this?
Yes, let me just agree with CS Yatani that there are efforts we do make, but on the specific one concerning the house allowance, which was the last time that we had an issue with Parliament, that issue is actually before court, so I may not say much, but it's really to say that we do make a lot of attempts, and sometimes the stakeholders may see it differently. And for that specific one, as I said, it's in court, so we can't speak about it. But it's not because the Commission has not attempted to manage some of these benefits that stakeholders may ask or demand.
Kwame, your thoughts as far as that issue is concerned, the role of the National Treasury, putting it side by side with the National Assembly, and the checks and balances as far as this runaway expenditure is concerned?
Well, I think we have a constitution that determines how budgets are made, and we have a role that has been assigned by that constitution as well to the Salaries and Remuneration Commission, and obviously specific roles to the Treasury too. So there's a requirement for these negotiations to take place, and if the SRC makes a decision, which is obviously within the responsibilities granted to them, if this matter is in court, let's see and hope that the court is persuaded. But I think the idea that Kenya's parliament weaponizes the budget, and that's my words, nobody else's, where it punishes independent institutions for doing their jobs that they're required to do, is actually a bad trend, and it's something for which Parliament needs to be called out. I hope the courts do the right thing as well, but anyway, like everybody else, we need to watch. That said, I think the idea about budget making being one that is negotiated between the executive and the Parliament, and obviously other arms of government as well, pitching in, is what a good constitution is supposed to do. So perhaps we are still in the learning stages, but I think Parliament needs to be alerted to the fact that it uses the budget to try to make its way and actually undermine the roles of certain institutions. So let's see what the courts decide here.
Going to Governor Paranya, there's a lot of concern online regarding the state of counties and COVID-19 and what this means for your revenues. I know you spoke a little bit about the issue of on-source revenue at the start of this, but just give us what your outlook is like, especially in light of the situation we are right now.
At the moment, it is very bad, in that this is the time that now COVID is at the counties, at the community level. Quite a number of people have been infected. We have lost also some people through COVID-19. It is a very, very bad situation. And of course, because of that, that is going to affect the economies of all the counties in terms of activities, because some of us have even closed offices because of what is happening. And as such, the little revenue that we use to collect at the grassroots level, it will not be there. In fact, in my own county, we had to adjust the last year's own revenue by over 600 million, which meant all activities that we had planned to do within that 600 million we were not able to do. And this year, because we have started with the COVID from 1st July, up to now we are still in it, and we are not sure how long this will go, then I'm very certain that this is going to be a very bad year in terms of own revenue for all the counties.
All right, thank you. And I'm told by my director that I have about 4 minutes to go. So let me just start by picking up closing thoughts. Let me start with Kwame. Your closing thoughts around the public finance management as far as the wage bill is concerned.
Well, I think as was stated, the diagnostic is clear. Government in some areas has too many workers. Their productivity is low, so that reflects on the wage bill. Secondly, I think the design of the wage structure in Kenya, where you have most of the money and as allowances, allows for a lot of cheating and actually distorts the public wages policy. I personally would have no problem if wages were increased by, say, half of what the allowances are, because if you talk about allowances coming down to close to 300 billion, that's a lot of allowances. So I'd rather just have people have 20% more or 30% more, reduce the allowances to maybe 15 or so, define them properly, and actually just put caps so that you're not having people get the perverse incentives to have meetings again and again. Okay. That is inevitable.
Governor Paranya, your closing thoughts?
I think the national government has to do more because we had a conference, very, very successful national wage bill conference nearly a year ago, and we agreed on quite a number of issues. Most of those issues were to be taken by either government ministries like Ministry of Public Service, Ministry of Labor, SRC. But unfortunately, up to now, we have not seen them take that particular initiative because the policies that they were to undertake, we have not seen anything at the moment. So I think the national government should move as fast as possible. SRC should deal with these issues of the many allowances, which are very difficult to control, so that actually we are able to squarely deal with the wage bill. While on our part, we should work on revenue. to make sure that we collect as much as possible.
The wage bill at the moment, which we said was about 48%, and has been showing a positive trend. However, looking forward and going by what the CS say, there are challenges in revenue. And this is to do with the COVID-19. So given that that is the position where we are today, the ratio will actually get worse, because if our revenues goes down, it means that the ratio will go down. So the challenge ahead for us in terms of wage bill is we are likely to see a reverse of the trend that we had been seeing. And that poses a challenge that we must control the wage bill more than before. We cannot afford to continue where we are doing. And lastly, as we continue discussing, is that the wage bill drivers are not all controlled by the Commission. Okay. Some are controlled by stakeholders. And therefore, this becomes a national conversation where all stakeholders play their part to ensure that we are able to reach the target set in the PFM Act.
Okay, and CS Yatani, your closing thoughts very briefly.
Yeah. It's really important that a sustainable wage policy and a strict adherence to this policy is key. We do not want a situation where wage bill runs ahead of the GDP growth. Otherwise, it can easily crash. Number two is now we are at a critical point of the implementation of the contributory pension scheme. This is really key and almost needs to take seriously, because now we are now going towards a situation where we're going to have more people retiring and going to put a heavy load on the exchequer. And then lastly, one key area that we need to take seriously and we need to look for ways is the productivity. We'd rather have fewer people, but able to produce enough service delivery, and at the same time also playing their role effectively, so that the rest of the employees are released for mainly the private sector or to engage in other areas of production. I think that strike the balance between productivity and the wage, the salaries are quite key, and it's a matter that we need to take it very, very seriously in the course of time. If we don't do that, then we are likely to have a challenge.
Yes. Thank you, CS Yatani, for your comments. Thank you to my guests, Lynn Mengich, Kwame Owino, and of course, Governor Oparanya. Thank you for having this conversation on the public sector wage bill. Coming up next is the news.
Sensitivity pain fast with Sensodyne Rapid Action for clinically proven relief in 60 seconds.
How powerful is the healing power of Vaseline? We applied Vaseline jelly to one leaf, the other we left alone. After just a few days, the difference is visible. Nothing locks in moisture better to keep skin restored. That's the healing power of Vaseline.
New Blue Band Peanut Butter. Made with 100% pure peanuts and a good source of omega-6. Grow healthy and happy kids with New Blue Band Peanut Butter.
Naishi Kawangware stage 2. Nilikuwa nasomea primary school, ilikuwa inaitwa Emmanuel Glory Academy. Sikuwa naona kama naweza join high school, but my teachers waliniambia kama kwenye hamujiwezi kujoin high school, sasa mkiwork hard class tutawasaidia kujoin program ya Wings to Fly. I worked hard and I got scholarship. I was able to be among the chosen few. Form 2 tumeingia hivi, term ya kwanza walilipia. Sasa kukatokea na hii pandemic ya coronavirus, wakatuambia tukuje home. Mtu kama mimi sasa nilianza kushtuka, sasa nikasema nitasoma aje sasa. Wings to Fly program ikaleta hizi radio na solar zitusaidie kuniwezesha kuendelea kusoma hata kama ni usiku. Equity huwa wanatupatia pesa kidogo ya mahitaji hapa nyumbani. Saa zingine nakanga tu chini naambia Mungu asante kwa kunisaidia nilijoin hii program.